practices making M16s. You can actually find an example from our same lot. So they were made in 3 batches, basically. It was like 60,000, 70,000, 50,000, or whatever. They were made in these batches. You can find an example from our same batch of produced rifles in the Smithsonian Museum of American History. So we're currently, our deputies are running around, supposed to be protecting this community with museum pieces. There's some in the British Royal Museum. They're in museums basically. These are antiques. They're museum pieces. If you look at this, the photo, that's the Smithsonian exhibit photo. You can see the date that it was actually added to the museum in 1995. So this became a museum piece, 30 years ago, roughly. And then because the Army is the Army, and it's a lot like law enforcement in some respects, they have paperwork on everything. So I dug up the old Army Technical Bulletin, which is basically its guidance on how long you need to plan for replacement cycles of different things, everything from tires to freaking jet aircrafts. So I found one for the M16, A1, and it's 25 years. And any Army guys here? Any military guys? Marine? Okay, so you know probably better than anyone then. The military likes to use equipment until it is like not functional, right?
Fucking
yeah.
Boy howdy.
Exactly. So if the Army is saying after 25 years these things are no good and need to be replaced, if you do the math, we're using these things about 3 decades after the Army said their service life has ended. So you probably can't even find Marine Corps units issuing these out, and they issue out the oldest equipment I've ever seen. So
I know, duct taping it together.
Yeah.
Dragging it on to next year.
Yeah, so you probably know better than anyone what I'm talking about when I say we're Frankensteining these
breakages,
things.
yeah, just slapping it together.
Yep.
Yep.
Good. So, which leads me to our current state, right? We have this mixed bag. I didn't know what to title the slide, so I'll call it mixed bag. We have this mixed bag of rifles and parts. The thing is all these things aged a little differently, right? Like maybe the one that I was issued went to Vietnam, did 3 tours in Vietnam, and 1 tour in Desert Storm. Maybe the one that Sergeant Pettit was issued did 5 tours in Vietnam or whatever, right? So they all have varying tolerances and wear. What that means is that I can't, because the wear is so great and the tolerance stacking. When I say tolerance stacking is so the military military specifications for the tolerances between parts is going to specify plus or minus X amount of inches or 0.0 amount of inches. Well, what happens is as one breaks down and that tolerance becomes greater, it exaggerates the difference in tolerances that was already present until we end up with some cases rifles that are no longer functional because they don't fit together anymore, right? Or the parts don't fit, aren't housed. I'm trying to do this without getting into the technical terms for the weapon pieces, but where things aren't fitting no more because they're real worn out. How about that? What that means though is when I say I had Sergeant Pettit here and he's a new guy and I'm training him on rifle stuff and I'm like, okay, well he has this rifle and I train him to do this manipulation, right? Okay, this is how we change a magazine, and I have him insert that magazine. Well, this rifle, the mag well's super out of spec and the bolt catch is no longer functional. The mag catch is no longer functional, and so he has to slam it in and also press this button at the same time, right? Because it's not how it should be, but that's what he has to do to make it work. So that's how I have to teach him to make it work. And then that rifle inevitably breaks because our rifles break right and left. That rifle inevitably breaks, so I give him a new rifle, and now it doesn't. Now he can't do that same manipulation. He has to relearn how to do a magazine change. All right. That is not good. It's really time consuming on the instructor side because I'll have a guy who is doing all right. He's displaying acceptable level of proficiency. His rifle breaks. I give him a new rifle, and now I have to reteach him how to do a basic manipulation. And it's like we're starting over at square zero every time. So, in addition to that, we have, like I said, we're Frankensteining these rifles together. So we have barrels that are, some have been replaced. We have some barrels that are, so on this table, by the way, we got the varieties of our patrol rifles that we have out, right? So they're all vastly different. This is the old M16A1. So this has a 20 or 18 and a half inch, you know, 18 and a half? 20?
I think 18 and a half, what, 7?
Come on, Nura. No?
It's different.
They didn't issue these out back in the...
It was A2.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you had a newer, even back when you were in, you had newer rifles than we do.
Newer, yes.
Newer. Yeah.
Man, and he was in like the
2000.
freaking Revolutionary War or something.
Well,
So anyway, these have you know a certain barrel length and a certain twist rate, and I'll talk about what that is in a second. Versus these ones that we issue out have a different barrel length and a different twist rate. So all these barrel specifications vary greatly, which makes ammunition selection extremely difficult. Is my next slide ammunition? Can you see on there? Yes. Okay, cool. So I'm going in the right direction. So it makes ammunition selection extremely difficult. And I'll explain why in a second. But on the ammunition note, some of our deputies have old duty ammunition that was issued by the administration before last, which is an actual duty type ammunition. The last administration, not the current one, but the one before, that was in charge when I took over, or when I got hired, issued out practice ammunition. It's labeled as such on the box. It's I'll explain why it's inadequate, but they issued out a different type of ammunition, practice ammunition, as the duty ammunition. And so that's kind of what kicked me down this whole thing a year and a half ago. I'm like, holy crap, we need to fix some stuff, especially as it pertains to patrol rifles within the sheriff's office, because it's not it's inadequate for our purposes. So go ahead and hit the next slide. So like I said, we currently issue a practice ammunition for duty use. So I get really in the weeds on stuff. I'm going to try to keep this, without misrepresenting anything, I'm going to try to keep this as surface level as possible, right? So when we accept that sometimes law enforcement has to shoot people. We have no other choice but to fire a weapon at someone. Sometimes that happens. I think we can all accept that. When we do so, I think we can also all agree that the less times that we shoot someone, the better, right? We're trying to stop an active threat for doing that. The less times that I have to shoot someone, the happier I am. Okay, no one wants to shoot another person. So when I start talking about, I don't want you guys to think that when I start talking about lethality, I just want these super deadly rounds or anything. No, what I want is something that will effectively stop a threat as quickly as possible and with the fewest amount of rounds flying through the air as possible. So the current practice ammunition is commonly referred to as ball ammunition. The closest kind of example I can equate it to that there is data on. There's absolutely no data on how this current round that we issue performs when it hits someone, because it's not designed to do that. So no one's tested it because it's just target ammunition. So the closest thing I can equate it to is M193 ball, which is Vietnam era military ammunition. So it's a solid lead core, and it's got a thin copper jacket around it. All right. What it's designed to do upon impact is it enters the body at a high rate of speed. So these things were kicking, these M16A1s were kicking these bullets out at about 3,100 feet per second. So it's supposed to enter the body at a high rate of speed, and generally the number that you hear from U.S. Army testing is 2,600 feet per second. It needs to enter the body at 2,600 feet per second to do what it's designed to do. It yaws and it tumbles, and the copper jacket breaks apart. It causes what's called secondary wound tracks, and then the lead jacket, the lead core, creates the primary wound channel. Now at that high velocity, in addition to the bullet, it's a crushing mechanism. It's not a cutting. In addition to it crushing flesh on its way through, it also is dumping so much velocity. It's losing all that velocity rapidly. All that energy has to go somewhere, so what it does is it displaces the tissue and radially around the path of the bullet. What I mean is as the bullet goes, it displaces tissue like that, right? And it can cause significant damage to vital structures, you know, inches away from the bullet's actual path because of that. Human tissue has a certain elasticity. If we exceed that, we cause permanent damage, or we cause damage. So what that means is with a rifle bullet firing at a really high velocity, you don't necessarily have to hit a vital structure like a heart in order to make the heart stop working, right? It just has to be in that general area. Now, I'm not talking about the pseudoscience, hydrostatic shock, or anything like that. The jury's still out on that, but this temporary wound cavity is a documented effect that is known. The FBI has a lot of papers on it, if you guys are curious. That is a real thing. So that's one of the great reasons for rifle lethality versus pistol lethality. Pistol bullets don't travel at a high enough velocity. It does create a temporary wound cavity, but it's not at a high enough velocity to exceed that elasticity threshold of human tissue, so it does not cause, and will not cause an interruption in the function of vital organs. So the way pistol bullets are designed to work is to make as big a hole as possible to dump blood out in order to drop blood pressure so a person goes unconscious. That can take a lot of time versus immediately interfering with the vital structure. So that's all fine and dandy if you have M193 ball ammunition and you're launching it at 3,100 feet per second. We're not. We have practice ammo that is kind of like M193 ball, but it's got a much thicker copper jacket, and so it doesn't separate as it's supposed to. This is one I recovered from ballistic gelatin. So it doesn't separate like it's supposed to, and it actually stays 100% intact. And it's also not traveling through our rifles at a high enough speed to cause the temporary wound cavity that I was talking about. So essentially what we're doing is we are punching little, if we were to use this to stop a threat, we would be punching them with little .22 caliber holes. Quarter inch, just under quarter inch holes. Not very effective, and not at all what a rifle is designed for, what we deploy it for. So here's an example of ammunition fired into ballistic gelatin. So we have 3 different practice rounds, just like this, that were fired into clear ballistics. I didn't take these photos, full disclosure. But when I did our own ballistics testing, it was exactly this, right? I just had 3 quarter-inch holes in the ballistics gel. When I shot different types of duty ammunition into our ballistic gel, I got a result very similar to the top one, right? Where I have a very dramatic temporary wound cavity, and the bullet penetrated much less into the ballistic gel. Does that make sense? So we're getting less penetration, but because we're dumping that velocity, that energy into the body, right? We're transferring that effect into the body. So I went out to the range and did some testing with a bunch of different types of ammunition. So the video on the left is me firing one of these, our current duty ammunition, it's practice ammo, into 16 inches of ballistic gelatin. Behind the ballistic gel, I had this set up, right? So it's kind of roughly, I'm not a contractor, and I'm not very tool, I'm not Tim Toolman or nothing, but I set up basically, I don't know, what do you think, 1/2-inch plywood, and then like a 3.5-inch stud bay, and then I have some drywall behind it, right? Kind of like an exterior wall of a house or something. Like I said, I'm not, if you guys have construction backgrounds, don't laugh at me, but this is what I think the exterior walls of my house are made out of. So I set this up behind the ballistic gel, and then behind this I placed a steel target, right? And I shot through the ballistics gel, and where I circled here is, well actually, that hole is a different round, but where I circled here, there's an indentation in the wood. That's where the duty ammunition that we want to go to, the duty ammunition that we want to go to, went through the ballistics gel and actually hit the plywood here and bounced onto the table. So it gave me more than acceptable penetration. FBI guidelines 12 to 18 inches. Gave me more than acceptable penetration, 16 inches of penetration, and then failed to penetrate what would, my simulation of an exterior wall of the house. You'll notice there's a bunch of other holes in this that actually go through the drywall. That's because when I fired a practice ammo through it, it obviously went through the gelatin, the pseudo wall, and then impacted the steel. So anyway, the one on the left is the video on the left is me shooting the yeah, that's the duty ammunition. So no ring of steel, right? Also worth noting, that's a 5-inch suppressor. So we're going to talk about suppressors at the very end here. That's 5-inch suppressor, and it's I don't know if you guys heard it. It doesn't sound like you typically would hear it in a Hollywood movie or anything like that. So no ring of steel because the bullet bounced off the plywood here, and I pulled it up off the table. It's actually this bullet right here. All right. And then the one on the right is, all right, so full disclosure here, guys. I wasn't trying to game this demonstration or anything. I wasn't even actually planning on having this this presentation for you guys. I was just curious, and so we filmed it. I had shot the ballistics gel so much that I wasn't able to put them lengthwise anymore because it was just so chewed up. So I stuck 2 of them with, 2 of them sideways. And I wasn't wearing my watch, so I wasn't able to do the math, and I just eyeballed it, and I was like, yeah, 2 of these are about equal to 1 lengthwise. It's not, it's 4 inches shy. So I wasn't trying to game the test or anything. It's only going through 12 inches of ballistic gel on this. It's our practice ammo. But it goes through all 12 inches, goes through the plywood, the drywall, and then slaps the steel with some force here. Still some good kinetic energy on the steel there. That's our current practice ammunition. So I don't want to get into over penetration as far as I don't want to get into the details of it. But what I don't want to have happen is a deputy take what would otherwise be a good shot to stop a threat, an active threat, and have that round pass through the threat, pass through an exterior wall, and harm someone, a bystander or someone just in their house. I want the bullet to do the absolute minimum. I want it to do the, how do I phrase this, the right amount of terminal effects. I don't want too much and I don't want too little. Alright, this is an actual photo of me when I was fixing Chief Weigart's rifle.
Which one's you?
the rifle, really. Now we've highlighted kind of the deficiencies with our ammunition and the deficiencies with our rifle. It was like, well, how do we fix this, right? And I was looking at a couple options. So option 1 was, well, I'll just buy some duty ammo and we'll make it work, right? The problem was those aforementioned twist rates and barrel lengths. So, for example, this is what's called a 1 in 7 twist, and it's a 10.3 inch barrel. When I say 1 in 7, so as the bullet's propelled down the barrel, there's lands and grooves, otherwise referred to as rifling, on the inside of the barrel, and that imparts a spin on the bullet, and that in turn gives the bullet gyroscopic stability as it travels through the air, so it travels the same way every time, so we have accuracy. It's like throwing a football, right? If you see like a real nice tight spiral, it's because a big quarterback will throw a nice tight spiral, because that spiral is the gyroscopic stability. Now, with the longer the projectile that you have, the faster that spiral has to be. So the more revolutions per inch that you need in order for the bullet to stabilize. You guys with me? Okay. So with older types of duty ammunition, you had a lead jacket, and also with practice ammunition, you have a lead jacket typically, and then a lead core and a copper jacket. All right. So lead is dense and heavy. A lot of the newer duty ammunition that is performing extremely well is solid copper. So 1, it's good for the environment, so that's cool. And 2, it just performs better because lead does all sorts of unpredictable things versus copper, which is very predictable. So copper, however, is less dense than lead. So in order to make a bullet of the same weight, it has to be longer. They obviously can't increase the diameter because it won't fit down the barrel, right? It won't fit down the tube. So they have to make it longer in order to make it be the same weight. And we need that weight because we need a certain amount of kinetic energy, and that kinetic energy is a product of mass and velocity. All right? So what that means is, long story short, our duty ammunitions the bullets are getting longer. All right? Now, like I said, the longer the bullet, the faster that twist rate needs to be. So we look at